IIMA is known as one of the best business schools in Asia, if not the world. And one of the unique features that we have at IIMA is our faculty. Our faculty work in very unique research areas. Through Online at IIMA, we try to bring to life some of these unique perspectives that our faculty members have.
Sustainable acquisition of natural resources for the use by the population is what economics is all about.
One of the things that I also found very interesting in Economic Sutra was the parallel that you draw between Mahabharata, the Pandavas in the Mahabharata, and Adam Smith's concept of division of labor.
Chaturvarnyam maya srushtam guna karma vibhagashaha. What your varna is, whether it's a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Shudra, Vaishya, depends on your upbringing, education and your innate qualities. Nowhere in ancient Indian literature it says that it's based on birth. It's complete misnomer.
On the other hand, there is the Land Acquisition Act that you referred to, and you call it draconian.
Unions and labor rolls became prominent probably after Karl Marx, 1850s onwards. But we go perhaps a couple of millennia back. You may not know this, but one of the largest labor unions in India celebrates 17th September as the Labor Day or the Union Day, which happens to be birth date of Vishwakarma. This book basically is, I'm using it as a textbook for the online course.
Welcome to Online at IIMA. IIMA is known as one of the best business schools in Asia, if not the world. And one of the unique features that we have at IIMA is our faculty. Our faculty work in very unique research areas. Through Online at IIMA, we try to bring to life some of these unique perspectives that our faculty members have. In line with this vision, our first online course called Economic Sutra, Modern Economic Policy and Ancient India by Professor Satish Deodhar is being launched. Today, he will be in discussion with Milee Ashwarya, who is the publisher of Penguin Random House, on his book Economic Sutra, as well as on the online course Economic Sutra, Modern Economic Policies and Ancient India. I hope you enjoy this interaction and it is enlightening for all of you.
Everyone, I'm very excited to be here this afternoon to talk to Professor Satish Deodhar about a new course that IIM Ahmedabad has started on Economic Sutra, Modern Economic Policies and Ancient India. To begin with, I wanted to ask you, what is the contribution of ancient Indian literature to modern economic ideas?
So that's a good one. Till recently, I also did not know that there is enough contribution because we study the economics in the modern context. And it was my mother who really told me that she's a Sanskrit scholar, and she told me, Satish, every time I would go home and visit her, she would say that, Satish, look into our own literature, ancient literature, there is enough economics out there. So, one thing led to another, and then during COVID, I really started reading the ancient literature, and I said, my God, there is a treasure trove. Yeah. And that's how it all began. And believe me, there is enough literature out there. And we thought, the word economics comes from economica, that was written by Aristotle. It's a 7-page work. Yeah. And when I was reading Argumentative Indian by Amartya Sen, he said, well, if that's only 7-page, look at things like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. They are epics. But those epics are nothing compared to Mahabharata. Actually, Mahabharata is 7 times as large as both Iliad and Odyssey put together. And there is enough talk about economic aspects in Sabha Parva, Shanti Parva. That's how it got me started.
And there are a lot of key texts that you have, spoken about in Economic Sutra. One of which, of course, is Kautilya's Arthashastra, and that covers a large section, I think, of lot of ideas. So tell us a little bit more about, the relevance of Arthashastra now in today's world.
Right. So, when you start with economics, one has to define what economics is. And to my surprise, Kautilya is saying that sustainable acquisition of natural resources for the use by the population is what economics is all about. So today in the modern times, the latest definition of economics is that, economist Raworth, she talks about economics as is like a ring donut. You don't want to fall into the hole, which is the human deprivation, and you don't want to escape the ring, which is the environmental degradation. And Kautilya is exactly talking about the same thing. So I think there are so many aspects of this kind, especially sustainability aspects have been emphasized in our literature, and that comes out in my book also, and in the online course that we are doing also.
Yes. One of the figures that we all have grown up, reading about and revering is Gautam Buddha. And you mentioned that Buddha encouraged the accumulation of wealth, by householders through
Right.
lawful means, of course, but that was seen as a positive thing. And
Right.
that, of course, is also part of, what we've learned from ancient India, and
Right.
this is very much relevant in today's economy and the world. Would you like to throw some light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Western world thought that the Eastern ideas are otherworldly, not for making money and making business. But that's not really true. And as you referred, Gautam Buddha says that do a good job of business, but do it righteously. So dharma was an important concept while doing business as well. So in ancient literature, including in Buddhism, Jainism, or Hinduism, we say there are four objectives in life: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. In the modern literature, it's only unidimensional: utility maximization or profit maximization. But you have to maximize profits within the context or the contours of righteous act, which is dhamma or dharma, right? And that's what Gautam Buddha has been talking about. He says, of course, you can make money, but have righteous conduct. That's he emphasizes. In fact, charity also comes from there. And in modern economics, charity is for taking care of positive externalities. Meaning, if left to market, there won't be enough educational institutions, and therefore somebody has to give donation and start a school. That's the idea which Gautam Buddha was talking about. So charity is also an aspect of economics. Taking positive externalities, internalize them through market forces.
One of the things that I also found very interesting in Economic Sutra was the parallel that you draw between Mahabharata, the Pandavas in the Mahabharata, and Adam Smith's concept of division of labor.
Right.
So
Right.
that's quite interesting, and how these two people and two sets of characters in different times in history are pretty much saying the same thing.
Right. Well, I mean, that you find this principle running across in different literature sources, and Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna that follow your swadharma.
Yeah.
And his swadharma meant he was talking about he being a kshatriya, right? So you are trying to make sure that bigger violence doesn't happen later, so that you follow your own swadharma, which is a kshatriyaness. And that kshatriyaness, Sri Krishna is saying that it's division of labor. He says, Chatur Varnam Maya Srushtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. What your varna is, whether you are Brahmin, Kshatriya, Shudra, Vaishya, depends on your upbringing, education, and your innate qualities. Nowhere in ancient Indian literature it says that it's based on birth. It's complete misnomer. It's a guna karma that is really defined. That's division of labor, right? And Adam Smith said something similar. He said the difference between a philosopher and a street porter is not cause of division of labor, it's a consequence of division of labor, meaning their upbringing, education, and innate qualities that make them different, and therefore they choose what they do. And that's what is coming through in our ancient literature as well.
Absolutely. On the other hand, there is the Land Acquisition Act that you refer to, and you call it draconian, in your book Economic Sutra. which is sort of something we inherited from the Britishers,
Right.
and that had some drastic consequences
True.
over the years in Indian economy.
True. True.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think we should be proud of some of the contributions our ancient sages and seers have made to economic ideas or economic ethics, I would call it. The name for land in India in Sanskrit is Vasudha or Vasundhara,
Yeah.
which means something that holds wealth. Land in itself is not wealth. It helps us create wealth.
more wealth.
Even economist Henry George talked about the same thing. He said, land is given to us by nature. The rest we contribute to it, right? So it creates wealth. And therefore, if somebody owns the land, you don't have a right to confiscate that land from somebody else. That principle is called as eminent domain. And that eminent domain principle was there in the West Asian traditions, that king was representative of the Lord, and Lord owned everything, and therefore king had the right to confiscate the property from the individuals.
Yeah.
And that eminent domain principle was used by the British in Indian Acts, which we unfortunately inherited after independence. At that time, when the big dams were constructed or Bokaro steel plants were, a lot of irrigation projects were on, a lot of land was taken from poor
From
people.
for dams as well.
For dams also. Now, because there was no social media, things never came out in the open. But today, when height of Narmada Dam is to be increased, we immediately know because some displacement will occur. Fortunately, in 2013, we have amended the Land Acquisition Act, and now fair compensation has to be given. Right? So this concept of eminent domain was not there in the Indian tradition. Even kings had to buy land if they want to give it as a donation to somebody else. They could not just confiscate and give it to somebody else. So that's something different in our culture.
Absolutely. That brings me to labor laws. I wanted to touch upon that a bit. How do ancient texts, refer to labor laws, and what is the relevance of it even now?
Yeah, so of course, unions and labor laws became prominent probably after Karl Marx, 1850s onwards. But we go perhaps a couple of millennia back. You may not know this, but one of the largest labor unions in India celebrates 17th September as the Labor Day or the Union Day, which happens to be birth date of Vishwakarma, which is the patron saint of the worker class, right?
Yes.
And if you visit Mumbai, there is a temple in Nala Sopara near Mumbai. There is a 1,500-year-old statue of Vishwakarma, and you'll be amazed. He has 4 hands. In one hand, he is holding an instrument which is looking like a theodolite.
Okay.
The theodolite is one which used to measure the leveling of the grounds. The other hand has a wire of the plumb bob, which is used to measure the verticalness of a wall. Third hand has a measuring tape. Fourth hand has a canister for some liquid.
Oh, wow.
Now, this is going way back, millennia back in time, and that's the person who had basically started the sanghas or nikayas, which are called in modern terminology like FICI and CII, right? So it goes much back in time, and even Kautilya's Arthashastra or Shukracharya's Shukraniti Sara has given precepts on how you should protect the labor rights of the labor.
Yeah.
If somebody is hired for 12 hours, he should at least get 3 hours of break in between. That's mentioned.
It's quite detailed, right?
Quite detailed. Minimum wages are specified. So these two documents do talk about labor relations, in fact, labor rights. And there, what they talked about was a symbiotic relation between workers and the business class. It was not an antagonistic, relation between the two, and which is something we should, I think, emulate.
There are references that you all make to the monetary policy and how some of the ideas were already present in ancient Indian texts and are now, used even in today's economy.
Yeah. So, one example comes to my mind is again Kautilya's Arthashastra. And Kautilya was this is written in Buddhist documents, Mahavagga.
Yeah.
And they said that fellow is too clever. Because what happened, the story of
Yes.
Kautilya Chanakya, he was insulted by Dhanananda Mahan, and he went to,
Decided to take revenge.
right, and he came back with Chandragupta Maurya, but he had to fight the war against the Magadha Empire. How do you create capital for this, to build the war efforts? He converted 8 crore Karshapanas coins into 80 crore Karshapanas, and that's given in Mahavagga, by just reducing the copper content of the coins but giving silver plating to it, and he sold it at a higher price and created capital so that he could finance his war. So that's, in today's time, this is called as deficit
Amazing.
financing for the war, right? So it's increasing your money supply, or what we call as quantitative easing.
Yeah.
That is what Kautilya had done. So these ideas were very much there earlier. Same story with fiscal policy. Narada Muni, we know as a very playful person. He conveys one idea from one place and conveys it to somebody else.
Yes, the messenger.
A messenger, right? But he was really a pandit, and he's telling Yudhishthira that when he anointed as king for the first time, that make sure that your personal expenses are not more than the taxes that you collect, because the rest of the amount is to be used for developmental purposes. Basically, this is the modern day concept of avoiding revenue deficit. He talks about creating public goods. So many instances of this kind are there. In fact, Sharapanjari Bhishma, Sharapanjari meaning the Bhishma is lying on the bed of arrows, right, at the end of the war.
Yeah.
And he's telling again Yudhishthira that look how you should tax your people. Tax just like a honeybee collects nectar from a flower. And the importance of this is when you collect honey or a nectar from the flower, the bloom of the flower is not gone, but you use that nectar, right? Similarly, king should tax people so that the firms are not disincentivized to produce more, but the money is used for public goods in the following year. And in the process of collecting nectar, the honeybee is creating pollination.
Yes.
Therefore, there is production in the following year. So I think the simile is very mature and very profound.
No, absolutely. Well, there are so many ideas to take back, and we have covered quite a few foundational concepts. Satish, tell us about how the ancient Indian texts talk about the various stages of life, in human cycle.
A good question. In 1950s, Franco Modigliani, he talked about life cycle hypothesis, and Friedman talked about permanent income hypothesis. Basically, what they are saying is, an individual goes through stages of life. You are a student first. Either you borrow money or live off your parents while taking education.
Yeah.
Then you become a householder, you earn income. And in the retirement stage, that's the third stage, when you live off your savings. Now, the same idea many millennia ago has been talked about in our ancient literature. When we talk about ashrama system,
Yes.
it's nothing but the stages of life. And we have 4 stages: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. Right? So actually, we have 4th stage also added there. And I talked about 4 objectives of life: dharma, artha, kama, moksha.
Yes.
The weightage assigned to each one of them changes as we move along the stages of life. We never swim in the same river twice. So as a householder, our life objectives are 4, but the weightage is a little different. As a brahmachari, as a student, the weightage is a little different. So that's how, it's a dynamic concept, right? So you borrow or you live off your parents in the brahmacharya stage, then you are a grihastha, right? You earn income. And it's important that we have the 3rd stage, which is vanaprastha, which comes before sannyasa stage, because as you will know today, people even after retirement, they are very active. It's not that they have just given up on everything in life. They are still active and doing work.
Yes,
It's
very
only in the 4th stage, the sannyasa stage, when your limbs give up. That's the 4th stage. And it has implications even for pension funds in India. People are living longer. So even after retirement, they are living longer. Government is thinking of reducing the pension amount now because people are active even after retirement.
Yeah, I heard that people are getting pension for a long number of years,
Yes.
sometimes longer than they have served
Right,
in
right.
active service.
Correct.
So
I think
things
this
are
concept
changing.
is important. So that 4th stage is important. So don't give too much pension probably, right? That comes through. And it's important for us to keep this tradition alive, and as a householder, right? Family is a unit of analysis. That's also extremely important. In modern economics, we talk about an individual as a economic analysis, unit of analysis. Shukran Sara talks about family as a unit of analysis. And as you know, we are measuring growth of an economy through GDP growth rates. We have been tom-tomming about 7.5%
Yeah.
interest growth rate for the last so many years. We are the fastest growing economy, which is good in material terms, which is something very good. However, do we want to just mimic the West exactly in this fashion? Now, look, I'm talking about this family as a unit of analysis.
Yes.
As GDP growth rate continues to be very high, if whatever discussions we have in our kitchen as a family, if they are stolen by Zomato and Swiggy, we have lost something. As a result of fast economic growth, if whatever discussions in the family would happen at the dining table, if they are happening in restaurants outside with somebody else, probably we have lost something. If because we are progressing so fast and as a result our kids are in residential schools, maybe we have lost some connect with our kids. If as a result of this fast economic growth, we don't have time for our parents and they are in old age homes, we have lost some connect somewhere. And whatever is left between the husband and wife, if the modern economics is saying is everything can be bought in the market, so you don't need to be have that marriage institution itself.
Yeah.
So therefore, GDP growth rate is wonderful. It will come at what cost? We want to make sure that we don't exactly mimic what happened in the West. Fortunately for us, Shukracharya is saying that family should be unit of analysis, right? And he was a very witty person. He says that look, everybody is not lucky enough to find his or her life partner. And therefore, families need to support them, right? So there is a stability in society if families come together. How would families come together? Fortunately, everybody doesn't find his or her life partner, so families have to help.
Yeah.
When two families come together, who is looking for what? And there's a very famous witty quote he gives. He says, Kanya Varaye Trupam, husband or wife, they are looking for handsomeness or beauty. Mata Vittam, mother is looking for how much wealth the other family has.
Yeah.
Pita Shrutam, father is looking for how much educated the other family is. Bandhavaha Kulam Icchanti, the relatives are looking for whether the class matches or not. And rest are only for fun and frolic. Mishtan ne itere jana. They come only for. So the roles may change, but what he's saying is in the whole process, that's how two families come together, because lifelong family life is about accommodation and adjustments. And that means family is a unit of analysis, not an individual. It's not utility maximization for an individual, right? And that's what comes through.
Whole
in this.
concept of community and family.
Right.
One of the other things that is very much part of our lives now are loans, right? Various kinds of loans, from home loans to vehicle loans, and the ancient Indian texts do refer to the interest rates. So tell us about the connection and the thoughts that we have in ancient India and some which are relevant now in today's world.
I'm glad you bring this up. Almost 700 BCE, Panini, the grammarian, Sanskrit grammarian, had talked about daily compounding and monthly compounding of interest.
Wow.
He had different terms mentioned for it. So if that is what he's defining in those times, that means interest was a price for somebody's surplus funds to be given to somebody else for productive use was understood at that time. Right? In fact, Kautilya talks about term structure of interest rate. In modern terminology, we'll call it term structure of interest rate.
Yes.
Interest rate varying with riskiness of the asset. He says if you borrow locally, there is base rate. If you are traveling southwards, Dakshinapatha, through jungles, interest rate is higher because you never know
What might happen.
what might happen. If you are a seafarer exporting things to Mesopotamia, interest, because sea voyage is even riskier, so interest is even higher. And you'll be surprised to know, he says, the highest rate will be for a soldier, because the expected value of returning back home is very low. And therefore highest interest rate for him. So this was well understood, and compare this with the Western tradition. Aristotle said money is barren, it cannot produce money. Interest is basically product, money producing money.
Money begets
Right?
money. Yeah.
Money begets money, capital begets capital. Cato the elder said charging interest is as bad as murder. And that tradition continued in West Asia all the time. Remember Shakespeare's famous play, Merchant of Venice.
Yes.
There is this character Shylock, who is the money lender, right? And Portia, and that story you might know. And Portia says, when he's about to take a pound of flesh, she says, take only a pound of flesh, not a drop of blood. A very famous statement.
Yeah.
But I think there is a little darker side to it. The fact is that Jewish moneylenders were looked down upon.
Yeah.
Because interest was not to be charged, it was sin to charge an interest. And if a Jew charges interest to a non-Jew, that was allowed. They became the villains. And that carried through all the way up to probably Second World War. But in the Indian tradition, it was well understood that
And
interest,
acceptable.
it was acceptable. It was a price for somebody's surplus funds being used by somebody else. In fact, Arjuna, one of the names of Arjuna is Dhananjaya. That means somebody who knew how to accumulate wealth, right? So he again advises Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira was advised by anybody, everybody, right? Anybody and everybody. So he, after the war, Kurukshetra war is over, all of a sudden Yudhishthira says, now I want to become a mendicant. I don't want this royalty business, I don't want to earn taxes and do this. And Dhananjaya says, Arjuna says, no, look, don't worry. This is how the world is, and you need to accumulate wealth so that you can do charity, so that you can build public goods. And he says, interest charging is also, it's okay. He says, look, just like a stock of domesticated elephants is used to capture one wild elephant, that's the interest you get from the existing stock of capital. Look at how many thousand millennia old. The story is
all
so
these thoughts are embedded, in our
absolutely.
ancient literature. It's been lovely talking to you, and Economic Sutra is a book that you've written that we have published at Penguin.
Right.
And the course is also called Economic Sutra.
Yeah.
So I hope all the viewers and students get a copy of the book and tell us a little bit more on the maybe some other key takeaways that students can utilize from the book.
Right. So this book basically is, I'm using it as a textbook for the online course. And I must share that my course, it's an asynchronous course. That means you can take this course anytime. If you want to watch it just for half an hour, there are 8-10 minute videos you can watch at a time, or you can do binge watching over a weekend. It's up to you. It's a self-paced course. And for this course, I'm using my book published by Penguin, which is called Economic Sutra, Ancient Indian Antecedents to Economic Thought. So I encourage you to take that course. If you want, and many of you youngsters, you want to have a certificate, we give a certificate. If you don't want a certificate, it's free. You can just do it for your own self. As they say, Athato Brahma Jidnyasa, I just want to know what it is there. So you can do that as well. Or if you want a certificate, you can go for a certificate as well. I highly recommend that book, and the course will be a wonderful combination for you all.
Thank you so much, Satish. It was wonderful coming here. I'm sure the students will enjoy the course Economic Sutra as well as the book. Have a great day and see you soon in IIMA Ahmedabad.
Thank you. It means a lot to me, especially coming from publisher Penguin Random House. So thanks, Milee, for coming by and interacting with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Nice meeting you.